Am I the a-hole for hiding my pregnancy from my husband and my mother-in-law? Advice needed. I, 25F, have been married to my husband, 28M, for 3 years. My husband, I will call him Joel, and I met in college and got married very young. We have both always dreamed of having a big family, and I have always wanted to be a stay-at-home mother. Joel and his mom have always been close, but it wasn't until recently that I noticed how unsettling their relationship truly is. For starters, Joel's mom, I will call her Amy, has always been insanely protective over him. Although he is fully an adult man, Amy only refers to Joel as, "Hey baby boy." Amy insisted on having the first dance with Joel at our wedding, and because she was paying for most of it, I let her have that but put my foot down when she suggested that she should wear a cream color dress as mother of the groom. Amy lives in our neighborhood and has made a habit of showing up unannounced and inviting herself into all aspects of our lives. A few months ago, I found out that I was pregnant with our first baby, but just a few months in, I tragically lost the pregnancy. Before the miscarriage, Joel and I had been over the moon. Amy was so excited to be a grandmother, but some of her actions made me uncomfortable and angry. For starters, she insisted that she come to all of the appointments for the baby. When we first heard our baby's heartbeat, she jumped up out of her chair, snatched Joel's hands, and began to cry with excitement. Joel threw his arms around her, pointing out her grandbaby's heartbeat, while I was left sitting there on my own. Although it was still early in the pregnancy, Amy proposed throwing her own grandbaby shower in order to get supplies for the baby to be kept at her house. I tried to shut this down, but Joel once again defended his mom. When I felt the first kicks and movement, she ran over and nearly shoved my hand out of the way to try and feel. My final straw was after I lost the baby. I was devastated. Luckily, Amy was not over when I began noticing issues, and Joel and I were able to go to the hospital alone. But after calling his mom to tell her what was happening, Amy showed up at the hospital and cried so loudly Joel had to escort her out of the hospital and comfort her in her car. Once again, I was left there alone. This broke me. Although Joel has apologized profusely and said that he regrets leaving me, I have had a hard time finding forgiveness for that moment. I have to emphasize that other than his unusual relationship with his mother, our relationship has been nearly perfect. After the miscarriage, though, I started sleeping in the guest room and taking more time for myself to sort out my thoughts and decide where to go from here. Everything was fine until a few months ago I had a few too many glasses of wine at a friend's wedding and ended up spending the night back in our main bedroom. I started to notice the same familiar changes in my body from my first pregnancy, which terrified me. I finally took a test and stared at the little plus in disbelief. Although I want to be a mother more than anything, I couldn't help but still feel the same feelings from my last pregnancy. Maybe it was the wrong choice, but I chose not to tell Joel right then. I booked an appointment and went to the doctor and found out that I was about 6 weeks pregnant already. This is where I may be the a-hole. That was about 3 months ago, and I still have not told Joel. I am now 18 weeks pregnant and just starting showing more, and I have taken to just wearing big sweatshirts and baggy clothes around the house. I have loved being pregnant and not having to share the spotlight with Amy. This week, I felt the first little flutters of the baby moving and didn't have to share it with anybody else. In just a few weeks, I can learn his or her gender and not risk having to throw a grandbaby gender reveal for my father-in-law. Maybe most importantly, God forbid anything were to happen to the pregnancy again. I would rather handle it alone than have to deal with consoling her. But now, I don't know where to go from here. I can only keep this up for so long, but how do I explain to Joel that I have been hiding the pregnancy from him for months? Should I just run away and start a new life? Mostly kidding? Or, am I already in too deep, so I might as well just keep hiding it for as long as possible and not have to share my moment with anyone else? I love my husband and I don't want to leave him, but I don't know how I can save the situation and our marriage. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for taking my kids back home with me from my parents' house after they violated the one simple rule I gave them? In March of 2022, my parents reached out to me saying that they wanted to meet my daughters, Angela and Julianne, fake names, both 9, IVF twins. I agreed to it, on the condition that I didn't want them to meet my aunt's family. Growing up with them, they were incredibly abusive and neglectful to me when I had to live with them. We're talking about some really abusive things, physical and emotional. I'll give you one example. In 1997, my aunt took my brother's asthma inhaler and wouldn't give it back to him because he wouldn't share his cookies with her daughter. We're talking about a woman who at the time was in her mid-late 20s, doing this to a 7-year-old boy. I had my lawyer write up a contract. It wasn't legally binding, it was entirely symbolic. But it made the terms clear. I'll fly with them over from Seattle to Albuquerque during spring break and summer break, as long as these people are not introduced to them or anywhere near the property under any circumstance. I reserve the right to never bring kids back here if you violate this one rule. She signed it and I plan the trip. I tell my daughters who these people are, why I don't like them, and to tell me if they meet them. I treat my kids like they can understand things. If they have questions, I try and explain to them to the best of my abilities. Well, we make the flight down there and head to their home. We're there for about 2 hours when I hear the doorbell go off. Well, guess who it is? My aunt's family, and they're standing around laughing, pretending like I don't like them, and we've just always gotten along. I look at my mom and say, "Me, why did you invite them?" "Mom, well, they're family." "Me, they're your family. Angela and Julianne, we're going home." The girls hadn't unpacked their things yet, so they went and got them. I grabbed my belongings and started making my way out. My mom broke down and begged me not to go, trying to guilt trip me. "Really, you actually meant it? I can't believe you." Meanwhile, my aunt and her family default started making judgmental comments saying that I'm ungrateful, blah, blah if you've dealt with abusive people. You know, they're not particularly original and always default to victimization. Since then, I haven't responded to their messages and phone calls. I blocked them and instructed my kids to block them anywhere they could to which they have been compliant, not before asking me for the latest new jeans merch, of course. My brother came by 2 weeks ago. and he spoke to me very calmly and was trying to get me to budge. I gave them one rule, and they signed on it. They violated it within the first 2 hours of us being there. It wasn't just that, it's that they showed me that they don't respect me, that they cared more about my aunt's family than they did my rules, which kind of shows how much they care for my kids if they were completely willing to violate it not even 2 hours upon me arriving. I don't know what it is. My mom seems to have forgiven or not cared enough about what we endured with those people to where she will just assume that I'm bluffing when I make the rules clear to her. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for wanting to orgasm? Long story alert. So, I, 38F, was raised in a religious house. I'm no longer religious, but because of this, sex was kind of a no-no situation, and that included masturbation. I admit I tried a few times as a teen, but nothing came of it. No orgasm. I met my husband, 40M, after leaving home, and we waited for marriage to have sex. When we did start having sex, my husband always told me he loved the way I orgasmed on him. I didn't feel much different, so I asked him about it, and he said I would squeeze harder down there when it happened. I told him I didn't notice it much, and he told me that everyone hyped it up to be more than it actually was, and that I was in fact orgasming. I went to my OB recently for other issues, and he noticed some sensitivity I had down there. He started asking me about it affecting my sex life, and I explained what my husband told me and how I had not noticed it much. He was quiet for a minute, then asked me questions about if I masturbated, and I told him how I tried, but it never went anywhere for me. He left the room, and a female nurse came in to talk to me. She started explaining things about nerves in the vagina and how female orgasms usually work. She even told me a few things to go home and try to see if I was able to. She suggested I give it a shot, and if it doesn't work, report it to my OB, so we can make sure all my nerves are functioning properly and there are no underlying issues we need to know about. I was hesitant, but later in the week my husband had to work late, and I used that time to try some stuff out. It worked, and I had my first real orgasm. I admit I was so excited I did it a few more times to be sure I wasn't just making it up in my head. It was simple and easy too. All I needed was a rub in the right spot, basically. I waited until the next time my husband asked for sex to show him, and he asked me where I learned this. I explained my doctor's visit and everything, and he got angry. He said I already orgasmed during sex, even though I don't feel it, and that I should be happy with that. I told him that it wasn't difficult to do this one extra thing during sex, and I didn't see the problem because we both orgasm in the end. He said he didn't want to be bothered with it, and that if I was going to insist, we shouldn't have sex anymore. I agreed and told him we would not until he came to his senses and realized this was not a difficult ask. He said if we're not having sex anymore, we should just divorce so he can find someone else. I told him good luck because with a dead sex life, a failed 10-year marriage, and 2 kids baggage, he won't have many options. Am I the a-hole for any of this? Advice, please? TLDR, never orgasmed, learned how, and pissed off my husband because he doesn't want to do anything but PIV sex. Now wants a divorce because I refused sex, and I told him good luck because he has a dead sex life, a failed 10-year marriage, and 2 kids as his baggage. Am I the a-hole for any of this? Advice, please? Edit. Despite some beliefs, yes, this is a real post. There are lots of comments, and I'm trying my best to work through them. Thank you all for being so supportive so far. My husband and I aren't currently speaking. However, he did come into the kitchen earlier and said he wasn't serious about the divorce yet. I plan to give him time to calm down, and we'll try to talk to him tomorrow. Am I the a-hole? Dates. Am I the a-hole for wanting to orgasm? Hey everybody. Sorry my update is so late. A lot has happened and it has changed my life. Trigger warning. Childhood essay. So I finally sat my husband down to talk, and he wasn't happy about it. He kept saying he didn't want to do it, touching/rubbing, nor did he want to witness me doing it to myself. I kept asking why he had a problem with it, and finally, he exploded. He explained to me in detail what his now-deceased grandmother used to do to him every time he spent the night with her. It was awful and wrong, and my poor husband hated it. He explained that he never told because his grandmother said she would blame him and say he assaulted her and have him sent to military school. He said because of her, he doesn't find doing those things sexy or fun but disgusting. After he told me, we were both silent for a while. He mentioned that I was the only one he had told before. I suggested therapy, and he surprisingly agreed. He said if all goes well, he will one day be able to help me in the bedroom. We agreed to no sex until he was comfortable enough to participate with me. Masturbation is allowed, but in private for now. He started therapy and seems more relaxed and happier. The life-changing part for me is the different perspective I have on the situation now. Initially, I thought he was being an awful husband. Now I know most of it is trauma-based. That's my update for now. If interested, I may update again on my profile once we get back in the bedroom. Bye guys.